And what I wanted to do today, and kind of celebrate the new year, is to talk about two primary things. And one is has to do with vow, with dedication, and wherever we are at this point in our practice, this notion of kind of beginning again is very common to Buddhism, to meditation practice. In fact, this thought of beginning again, and I like that because it goes through my head sometimes. If I'm sitting and I have a lot of thoughts kind of crowding into my mind, and the mind is busy and hyper, is simply to begin again. Come back to breath. We don't worry about what the mind is doing. We just simply allow it to be as it is rather than fighting it or feeding it energy or following blindly behind it, and just come back and begin again. And in many ways, I feel like this new year time, that's been coming up for me quite a bit, is beginning again. Because as we begin again, we are never in the same place that we were before. Even if we bring our mind back to breath during a mindfulness session or meditation, we are slightly different than the last time we brought our mind back to the breath. No two moments are identical, even though they may feel this way. So, if this is true for our minds, if this is true for sort of how we engage with ourselves, and that from one moment to the next, one breath may be different from the next breath. Um, no 2 seconds, no 2 moments, no two breaths are the same. Then it actually gives us a really good cause to be optimistic, largely because of the nature of impermanence. The nature of impermanence suggests this too, that from one moment to the next, things are always going to be different. Um, the gross level, the manifested level may feel the same, but in very subtle ways, there are different, what we call causes and conditions coming together, and then those disperse and new ones come together. Part of this, and so part of this has to do with our dedication and our aspiration. And so this time of year, I think in particular, after 2020, after the year that we've all kind of managed to ride the waves through, and we've done it every week, just about every Sunday night since the pandemic, I believe, since at some point in April or whenever, we've kind of been able to ride these waves, and we're still here. We're still here, and we're not the same necessarily. Um, but that's not a bad thing either, right? Due to the nature of impermanence, there are always new opportunities to keep rededicating ourselves to whatever practice resonates the most with us. And that's why in Buddhism, this theme of dedication, or what I like to call sort of beginning again, traditionally involves three main concepts. And as we reflect on the path, if we think about our spiritual path, whatever it may look like, whatever it may be, and it may be varied, it may be rich, it may be narrow, it may be straight. Most paths wind a little bit. Um, there are three qualities that I wanted to talk about briefly. One in the Pali word is aditana, which means resolve. It means sort of a sense of willfulness, energy, if you will. And largely that energy is dedicated to awakening, whatever that means for you. That there is a process of freeing oneself from the suffering in life through a particular path. Um, and so this requires some energy, some inspiration. How many people feel like, oh, I should meditate? This year will be the year I practice every day, right? And maybe it happens, and that's great. Maybe it doesn't. But without the second point, I personally find this difficult. I find it difficult to have the resolve without the devotion. And so the next term, pranidhana, pranidhana. Some of you who I know, Burl, you're a yoga teacher, and you've probably, if you've read the Yoga Sutras, you've heard this term, Ishvara Pranidhana, which is a devotion to Ishvara, or divine being, right? And so, from the Buddhist view, there is no sense of Ishvara here, no deity, no God necessarily in the same way. But really, it's about devotion, and it's about the vow within our heart to cultivate the qualities of compassion. So the first one is really about energy. How do we kind of regather our energy and put that resolve into action? And in my opinion, it's very hard to do that just through sheer will. You may get, certain way along the path and then fizzle out. This is very natural. This happens to all of us. And so renewing dedication means renewing the vow or the devotion to how I show up in the world. And it's not just for me, but for myself, for others. And this is the kind of the heart opening part of it. If you've experienced suffering this year, man, you are not alone, right? We know this. And so being moved to say, okay, it matters how I show up. My dear friend and mentor, Marty Lowenthal, has this wonderful phrase um, that we can become the environment that others experience. And this is why our practice is relevant, why the path itself is important. So, pranidhana, devotion, a vow to keep the heart open and to keep cultivating compassion for suffering as it's encountered. This strengthens us, it helps us to show up differently. So, we have adhitthana, which is the resolve, the will, the energy, which forms the dedication to our awakening. We have pranidhana, which is the devotional part of it, which is the vow, the dedication to be a compassionate person and not allow my heart to slam shut or close up around suffering, which it often does for all of us. But the vow to sort of keep it alive and present no matter what is happening. And then the third, um, the great Tibetan master Yonggi Mingyur, uh, who's written quite a bit. He's fairly popular. I did a virtual weekend with him a couple of weekends ago, a retreat, and he says that this third is a seal, SEAL, that that our dedication is a seal. It seals our practice, right? That the aspiration that we have by, and we do this at the end of our call every Sunday night, we recite the dedication prayer. And largely the rationale behind that is because it's almost like it seals the deal, if you will, right? And what it does is it not only seals our aspiration, it kind of imprints it in a very subtle way when we're done practicing. But in Buddhism, and according to Yonggi Mingyur, it also seals the merit, the dedication that our practice is not just for ourselves, but it's for others too, that we are practicing for the well being of all living beings. And so, this third dimension of dedication, of vow, if you will, is specifically to seal the deal in our practice. Actually, it's sealing the path that we're on. It's a recognition and an imprinting of ourselves onto the path and the path within us. So it's kind of cool to think about it. Rather than thinking of, okay, this year I'm going to practice more meditation. I'm going to try not to think bad about this group of people out there and that group of people. Don't worry so much about that. But maybe think about dedication through these three lenses. Energy, if the energy is flagging, we may get it by uh, cultivating pranidhana, which is devotion in the heart, which is really moving the heart to be moved to practice for our well being and the well being of those we love and all beings ultimately. And then to seal that with a dedication, um, the aspiration, and the dedication is to the path itself. So this kind of brings this notion of beginning again, uh, I think, into a different light for me. It's not just about bringing mind back to breath, bringing myself back to the present. Yes, it's about those things in a very practical way, but it's also about coming back to your deeper intentions, to the motivation that has you show up on these calls, that has you show up to the people you love in a certain way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be here, and none of us would be here. We'd be doing other things. So we have a sincere dedication, I think. And it's not just for ourselves, even if it feels like it is. The importance of community is deeply rooted in this as well. Why it's helpful, I think, to see each other every week, to be part of that. So, for me, this beginning again, this new year is an opportunity, whether we're making resolutions. My one resolution is rededication, beginning again, because it implies we show up a little bit more with some energy and some renewal rather than I have to quote unquote keep going. Let's start over with the new year. Next week, we're going to talk about the hush of winter. We're going to start with the earth element and talk a little bit about the Native American view of the hunger season. And in my opinion, this time of year is perfect time of year for a holiday dedicated to peace. And I'll tell you more about that next time. Um, so, anyway, we're kind of, I think, beginning again tonight together by kind of holding this certain space together. And I think having good intentions, recognizing our motivation is pure and actually quite deep. It's already quite deep, our intentions. It's easy to forget about it or avoid them, but they're still there and they're wholesome. Okay. So